Hey, Classroom 6. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about ecosystems, and we're going to be talking about how energy moves in ecosystems. So we know that ecosystems have a lot of different organisms in them. None of these organisms would be able to survive without energy. You know how sometimes you feel really tired and you might say to your mom or your dad or your teacher, I just don't have enough energy to get up right now. Well, that's kind of the same concept in ecosystems. Animals need to consume things in order to have energy. That's why sometimes if you're feeling a little tired, we encourage you to eat breakfast. It gives you energy to get through the day. So we're going to take a look at how different organisms obtain energy in order to stay alive. The most frequent way that animals obtain energy is through food. All animals are consumers. Consumers need to eat something in order to get energy. You and I are consumers. We eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner so that we can have the energy to get through our day. There are a few different types of consumers, though. There's something called herbivores. These are the types of animals that only eat plants. For example, a rabbit doesn't eat meat. A rabbit only eats plants. Carnivores are a type of consumer that only eat other animals. They only eat meat. But omnivores are the type of consumers that eat both plants and animals. These are the terms that we use for animals, but it actually applies to people as well. You might have heard of a vegetarian before. These are people who don't eat meat. I have a lot of friends who are vegetarians. These people would be called herbivores. You would consider me an omnivore because I eat meat, but I also eat other foods too. Now, Mr. Reckner isn't really a carnivore, but sometimes we joke with him that he is because he really likes meat. Now we're going to talk about food chains and webs. Although animals consume other animals and plants and all of that, there's a greater chain than just the relationship between those two organisms, because the energy of what one consumer consumes then turns into a different kind of energy for another consumer. So remember last week we talked about that big fancy word symbiosis, about how organisms relate to each other? Food chains are a part of that. The food chain shows what an animal eats. So for example, rabbits will eat wild strawberries. Rabbits will then be eaten by foxes. This means that the energy in the wild strawberry goes into the rabbit. And then when the rabbit is eaten by the fox, that energy goes into the fox. So let's look down here at the food chain of an owl. We start with a plant. Now the plant is not really the consumer, but it is consumed by the insect. The insect will eat the plant. And then the mouse will eat the insect. Then the owl will eat the mouse. So the energy that was in the plant went into the insect, which went into the mouse, which went into the owl. And that brings us to our last part of today's lesson, which is about energy pyramids. Energy pyramids are diagrams that show the amount of energy that flows through each level of a food chain. So you'll notice here at the bottom of the pyramid, it's very wide. This is because this is the greatest amount of energy. You can see that these are the producers, these are the plants. Now, when the primary consumers up here eat the plants, they take in that energy. But the rabbits use up a lot of that energy, right? Because they're running around, they're doing things. So that means that the reason that this layer of the pyramid is smaller is because there's a little bit less energy. And then our secondary consumers eat the primary consumers. Now there's even less energy because the snakes have things to do too. And then up here we have the hawk, and that will eat the snake. Now this is where there is the least amount of energy. That doesn't mean that the animals or organisms at the top of the energy pyramid don't have as much energy. It just means that they need to eat a little bit more in order to acquire that same amount of energy. Now you're going to go onto your Google form and answer a few questions, and I look forward to seeing your responses.